Detroit, October 9th, 4:17 in the afternoon. Marcus Hale crouched on the sidewalk outside a gas station on Gratiot Avenue, two folded bills in his right hand, an untouched paper bag lunch in his left. He had not eaten since the night before. He was not thinking about that. He was thinking about the girl. She was sitting against the brick wall with her knees pulled to her chest and her bare feet gone gray from the concrete. Her cardboard sign, "Anything Helps," red marker bled by rain, lay face down in the gutter. She hadn't picked it up. She had stopped asking. She was simply inside it now, the way a person gets when they've been suffering long enough that they stop performing it for anyone else. A man in a gray suit walked past. His shoe caught the edge of the sign and sent it skidding across the pavement without breaking his stride. He did not look down. Marcus watched the sign slide. He did not look up at the man. She was staring at the two bills in his outstretched hand, like they were something she had stopped believing in. "Hey," Marcus said, "take it, please." His 6-year-old daughter Lily stood 4 feet behind him, both hands gripping her backpack straps, watching in complete silence. The girl reached out. She took the money. For 1 second, on a Detroit sidewalk in October, two strangers looked directly at each other. Neither of them understood yet what that second was worth. 22 hours later, 3 black Escalades would park on Chalmers Street. A man worth $4 billion would ring buzzer 2B and wait. If this story means something to you, like this video and drop a comment with where you're watching from. Stay to the end, because what happened at 3 in the morning in a hotel room across the city, that's where this story really starts. It did not start on that sidewalk. It started 14 hours earlier on a job site off East Jefferson Avenue, where Marcus Hale was handed a termination slip by a man who was already looking at his phone when he handed it over. Derek Marsh ran Marsh Construction, mid-sized outfit, commercial work, 3 active city contracts. Marcus had worked under him for 2 years and 4 months. He had never been late. He had never filed a complaint. He had never called in sick, including the February morning 6 weeks after his wife Sarah died, when he showed up at the site at 5:58 a.m. with red eyes and a packed lunch, and said nothing to anyone, and lifted things all day until his shoulders burned and his mind went quiet. That was the kind of man Marcus Hale was. Derek fired him on the claim that $340 worth of copper wire had gone missing from a locked supply cage during Marcus's Saturday shift, the only shift that week Marcus had worked alone. The accusation arrived not as a question, but as a conclusion. The termination form was already printed. The reason for dismissal read, "Theft of company property, evidence under review." Marcus stood on that job site in his jacket with the torn left elbow and looked at Derek for a long moment. He asked one question: "Is there footage?" Derek said yes. Marcus said, "Then show it to me." Derek said, "HR handles that," and Marcus understood exactly what kind of answer that was. He walked off the site with $22.47 in his wallet. Rent on the apartment at Chalmers Street was due in 4 days, $890. The refrigerator held eggs, 1 can of soup, and half a bag of rice. His daughter Lily was at Kettering Elementary, 1 mile north. He walked. He picked her up at the gate. She came out in the purple jacket with the broken zipper he had been meaning to fix for 3 weeks. She took his hand without asking why he was there early. Outside the school gate, she looked up at him. "Daddy, what happened?" He said, "Nothing happened, baby. Let's go home." They took the long way, the way that went down Gratiot. He did not know yet that the long way would change everything. They were halfway down Gratiot when Lily stopped walking. Marcus took 2 more steps before he felt it, her hand gone still in his, the small sudden weight of a child who has decided not to move. He turned around. She was not pointing. She was not speaking. She was simply standing on the sidewalk with both hands around her backpack straps, looking at something against the wall of the gas station with the kind of stillness that only children have. The stillness of a person who sees the world exactly as it is and has not yet learned to look away from it. The girl with the cardboard sign was sitting exactly as she would later be described in 3 separate news articles. Barefoot, dark-haired, knees pulled to her chest, the sign face down in the gutter from where the wind had sent it. She was not asking anyone for anything. She had stopped asking somewhere around 3 p.m. when the 42nd person walked past her without slowing down. Lily pulled Marcus's hand once, not hard, just a single slow pull, the way she did when she needed him to see something she didn't have words for yet. She said, "Daddy, she doesn't have any shoes." Marcus looked at the girl against the wall. He looked at the $22 in his wallet. He had counted it twice on the walk from the school, the way a man counts something he already knows isn't enough. He looked at the paper bag in his left hand with the sandwich he hadn't eaten. He looked at Lily. He looked at the 4 days until rent was due. He looked at the torn elbow of his jacket. He looked at his daughter's face. He stood there for 30 full seconds, not moving, not deciding yet. Just standing on a Detroit sidewalk in October, with the cold coming up through the soles of his boots, holding every single thing he had to his name in his 2 hands. Then he crouched down. He walked to the girl. He knelt on the concrete in front of her and held out the 2 bills. She stared at them. She said, "No, I can't. This is everything you have." "Take it," Marcus said, "please." She took it, then immediately tried to give it back. He was already standing, already turning. He took Lily's hand. They walked. Lily looked back once. The girl was still there against the wall, both hands pressed around the 22, pressed against her chest, like something she was trying to hold together. If you're still watching, subscribe, because what that girl did with that money at 3 in the morning is something nobody saw coming. That night, Marcus made Lily the last packet of ramen in the cabinet. He boiled the egg that was left, cut it in half, and placed both halves on top the way she liked. He set the bowl in front of her at the kitchen table with a glass of water and a paper towel folded into a triangle, because she had once told him triangles were better than rectangles, and he had never folded a paper towel any other way since. He did not make a bowl for himself. Lily ate. She told him about the substitute teacher who couldn't pronounce her last name and tried 4 different times and got it wrong all 4 times. She told him her friend Deja wore the same shoes 2 days in a row and didn't care even a little, and Lily thought that was maybe the bravest thing she had ever seen. She asked if they could get a hamster. Marcus said maybe. He had been saying maybe about the hamster for 7 months. She went to bed at 8:30. He read her 2 pages of Charlotte's Web. She was asleep before Wilbur reached the fairgrounds. He turned the light off. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe in the dark the way parents do. Not for any reason, just because the sight of a sleeping child is the one thing in the world that asks nothing from you. Then he went back to the kitchen. He sat at the table at 2:14 in the morning with the lights turned low and a past due notice from DTE Energy open in front of him. 213.40, shut-off warning dated October 12th, 3 days away. He had a legal pad where he had written the numbers down in 3 different arrangements, trying to make the math work. He put the pen down. The math did not work. It had not worked in any of the 3 arrangements. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like the state of Michigan, was a drawing Lily had made 6 months earlier. 2 figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of a yellow house that their apartment had never been. Underneath, in her careful, slightly crooked handwriting, "Me and Daddy." There had been a 3rd figure once. Lily had drawn it herself and then erased it on a Tuesday afternoon while Marcus was at work. He had never asked her about it. Sarah Hale died on March 3rd, 3 years ago. A blood clot, no warning. An ordinary Tuesday morning when Lily was 3 and Marcus was on site, and life was simply a collection of ordinary things, until a phone call came at 11:47 a.m. from a number he didn't recognize. And then the floor came up. He still wore the ring. He sat at that kitchen table with the shut-off notice and the legal pad and the drawing on the refrigerator, and he put his face in his hands. He stayed that way for a long time. He fell asleep at the table. At 3:08 in the morning, in a clean white room at the Westin Book Cadillac on Washington Boulevard, a young woman named Elena Voss sat on the edge of a hotel bed. She was holding $22 in worn bills in both hands. Her phone was charged for the first time in 11 days. She was staring at a number she had not dialed in 4 years. Her thumb hovered over it. She pressed call. It rang twice. A man answered on the second ring. He sounded like someone who had been awake. He sounded like someone who had been awake every night for a very long time, waiting for exactly this. Elena. She didn't speak for 4 seconds. Then she said, "Dad, I need to tell you about someone." Marcus woke at the kitchen table at 7:31 in the morning, with his face creased from his sleeve and the legal pad stuck to his forearm. He peeled it off. He sat up. The shut-off notice was still there. At 7:43, the buzzer sounded. He ignored it. He checked on Lily, who was still asleep with one arm hanging off the edge of the mattress, the way she always slept, like she was reaching for something. He went to the kitchen. He found the eggs. The buzzer sounded again. 3 short bursts, deliberate and patient, a kind of knock that belongs to someone who is prepared to wait as long as it takes. He went to the intercom. "Mr. Hale, my name is Thomas Reeves. I represent Conrad Voss. Mr. Voss would like a few minutes of your time, if you're willing." Marcus looked at the intercom panel for a long moment. A name he didn't recognize, a title that meant nothing to him yet. He almost said no. He almost went back to the eggs. He pressed the door release. When he stepped outside onto the front steps of the building on Chalmers Street, the sidewalk had changed. 3 black Escalades were parked along the curb, with their engines running. 4 men in dark suits stood near the entrance, in an arrangement that looked casual and wasn't. A neighbor from the 3rd floor was standing at her window looking down. At the end of the short path from the door to the street, 2 people were standing together. One was a man in his 60s, gray at the temples, a coat that cost more than Marcus's car. He was standing with his hands at his sides and his chin slightly down, and he was not performing anything. He looked like a man who had rehearsed this moment so many times that he had stopped rehearsing and simply arrived. The other one was the girl from the sidewalk. She was not barefoot now. She was wearing clean clothes, dark hair pulled back, standing straight. She looked like someone who had been lost for a very long time and had recently, carefully, been found. She looked at Marcus and she said, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you my name." Her name was Elena Voss. Her father was Conrad Voss, Voss Capital Group, $4.1 billion. His name on 3 buildings Marcus had driven past his entire adult life without once knowing who built them. Marcus stood on the steps of his apartment building in a jacket with a torn left elbow. His first question was not about money. He looked at Elena and said, "Are you okay?" From the upstairs window, a 6-year-old girl in a purple jacket with a broken zipper pressed her palm flat against the glass and watched. If this story is moving you, subscribe right now. Because what Conrad Voss said next on those steps is something Marcus was not prepared for. Conrad Voss did not make a single phone call about Derek Marsh. He did not need to. Voss Capital Group carried a $2.1 million commercial construction contract, 3 buildings in active development, 18 months of scheduled work, with a subcontracting firm called Baxter North that had been using Marsh Construction as a secondary labor vendor for 11 months. 11 months of invoices, 11 months of site access, 11 months of Derek Marsh's name on paperwork that moved through offices Conrad Voss ultimately controlled. It took Thomas Reeves 4 minutes to send 2 emails on the morning of October 11th. Neither email mentioned Marcus Hale. Neither email mentioned Derek Marsh by name. The first went to the compliance director at Baxter North. The second went to the site supervisor across all 3 properties. The subject line of both emails was identical. Vendor review, immediate. By October 13th, Marsh Construction had been removed from every site. Derek Marsh found out from a phone call at 6:52 in the evening. He spent 43 minutes on hold with Baxter North trying to reach someone who would explain it to him. Nobody did. Nobody ever would. At 8:19 p.m., he called Marcus Hale. Marcus saw the name on the screen. He set the phone face down on the kitchen counter without answering. He stood there and listened to it ring. 4 rings, 5 rings, until it stopped. No voicemail was left. There was nothing Derek Marsh could say that qualified as an explanation, and he knew it. Marcus picked the phone up, turned it back over, and slid it into his pocket. From the living room, Lily called out, "Daddy, was that for you?" He walked to the doorway. She was on the floor working her United States puzzle. All the coastal states finished, completely stuck on the middle. "Nobody important, baby," he said. He sat down on the floor beside her and picked up Nebraska. Conrad Voss offered Marcus a position, site operations manager on a Voss Capital development in Midtown Detroit. $74,000 a year, full benefits, Monday through Friday, no more pre-dawn job sites, no more foremen who file paperwork before they finish accusing you. Marcus took 3 days to answer. When he said yes, it was not because of the salary, though the salary was real and the shut-off notice had been real, and the weight of sitting alone at a kitchen table at 2 in the morning with math that wouldn't work had been real. He said yes because of something Conrad told him on the steps of the apartment building that first morning, while Lily watched from the window above. Conrad told him that Elena had not spoken to him in 4 years, that he had hired people to find her, that she had hidden from all of them successfully, until 9 days on the streets of Detroit had taken everything from her. Her money, her phone charge, her belief that anyone would stop. And then a man with $22 to his name knelt down on Gratiot Avenue and said, "Please." And she called her father at 3 in the morning, and a door opened that had been sealed for 4 years. Marcus does not think of himself as someone who did something great. He thinks of himself as someone who listened to his daughter. "She doesn't have any shoes," Willie said. That was all it took. Sometimes the entire weight of another person's future rests on whether someone decides to stop. Marcus stopped. If this story stayed with you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today.